Hello, everyone, and welcome to this talk for the AI Week for Digital Leaders. We're looking at the future of leadership today and how AI will redefine the role of the leader. Dystopian future, many people talking about AI being a big problem. Many people like it, many people hate it, can see the collapse of society, but it does have a role, it's a useful tool. And we're going to get into some of the ways that you need to start thinking about it slightly differently to probably what you have done in the past, with some of these tools. But before we start, if I have a mouse that works, I have a mouse that works. A little bit about me, just so you believe me and realise that I do know what I'm talking about a little bit. So I am the MD of Sin City, which is a one-person company, so I could call myself CEO, MD, Master of Sales, whatever I feel like on that. I've written a book on digital, Be the Five, a couple of years ago. That's been out for a while now. I've also founded Hasheru, which is a project management system, but focused on qualitative data rather than kind of the milestones, the Gantt charts, and everything else. I've got two digital and data podcasts, Digital Confidence and Decision Making, slightly older now, did that a couple of years ago. And then the two data dicks I do with another guy called Richard. We talk about data. You can imagine it doesn't have a huge following, but some people do listen to it. And Sin City AI is a new tool that I'm building at the moment, which I'll touch on at the end of this because it does kind of directly relate to what we're talking about. But in the past, I was director of digital at Peterborough City Council for a number of years. I was there when we won World's Smartest City, beating the likes of Dubai and Buenos Aires, won AWS City on a Cloud alongside New York and a couple of other big American cities. We put a 100-kilometre fibre network through Peterborough back in 2014-15. We were doing things differently and thinking about how we use IT, digital tools and things like that differently for many, many years. Currently work as consultant across private, public and third sectors, all agencies really. So hopefully a bit of confidence in what I'm talking about with leadership and also with AI and with data, because ultimately it's the data that drives everything that we're doing. But I want to start with a question. And the question to all of you is, if you were having a meeting and these 6 people turned up and they sat next to you, what would you ask them? Would you ask them to take minutes of the meeting? Would you ask one of them to transcribe it? Would you ask one of them to write some emails to follow up at the end of the meeting? Hopefully, most of you will say no. Hopefully, you also recognise them as well. They are the dragons from Dragon's Den. But you just wouldn't do that. That's not in the thought process. You're meeting some of the best business brains in the country. You're not going to sit down and say, can you transcribe this, or can you write an email, or could you do me an image of this? So you have to think really about how you're then using these tools, because these are tools that are trained, I don't mean the dragons tools, AI, are tools that are trained on the knowledge and the information that these guys have kind of put out into the world. And it's not just these, it's across America, it's every famous person who's written a book, it's every methodology, it's every process, everything all these models have been trained on. And yet we're obsessed with this thing of, well, it can do my meeting minutes, and it can draft me some emails quickly, and it can do me some slides, and it can do these things, all around making us a little bit quicker at what we do. But no one's really looking at it from how effective are we? If Peter Jones was sat next to me, I'd be asking him, how do I make my business better? How do I grow? How do I achieve my goals? How do I hit my strategy? Help me to align that. What does that look like? Same with Deborah Mead and any of these people. They're the kind of questions you're asking them. And yet AI is trained on all this knowledge, and we're asking it the wrong questions. So as a leader, you need to sit there and think about when we implementing these tools, when we're thinking about using them, how are we going to do that? As in, how are we going to get the best results out of the tools for the business? How are we going to grow as a business? How are we going to grow as a company? But how are we also going to grow as people within that company? And obviously the best way of doing that is to ask it the right questions. Don't ask it to do menial tasks. Go in there, think about your strategy, think about what you want to achieve, and then ask it questions based on that. That's how you're going to grow. This is where all the knowledge sits. They've got so much knowledge sitting behind the scenes in these large language models, it's ridiculous. You can ask it about most books. Randomly, it didn't know my book. I had to tell it and train it on that one. I don't think I sold quite enough copies for it to get absorbed into OpenAI's back-end systems, but there will be a day where that does happen, hopefully. So you have to think about AI really as a strategic tool. And the problem at the moment is we kind of think of it as this efficiency gains. Everything I've looked at or heard of or seen or watched presentations on or webinars on or anything like that, it's all about kind of how do we do things a little bit quicker. Even there was a report that came out of government with Microsoft Copilot, how users were using it, how much time they were saving. And that's the focus. It was all how much time are we saving by using AI to do these tasks, not how much better are we, how we getting to achieve our goals, how we getting to achieve our KPIs, how we hitting some of the outcomes that we want to hit. Over the course of the year, we've got a plan that we need to achieve. How is AI helping us to get to that bit? It was how many minutes a day did you save? Did you save 5 minutes because it wrote you an email that could have taken time? Not being funny, I've been writing emails for 25 years. I'm quite good at them. If someone emails me, I can reply to it. It doesn't take a genius to figure that bit out. So that's not where my day's spent. My day is spent thinking about the big picture. And that's where I use these tools for, to try and give myself that view of what does this look like. And I use multiple tools. I've got ChatGPT subscription. I've also got Claude that I use a lot. I use Perplexity quite a lot. Leonardo AI for images. You'll notice every slide is just going to be an image from Leonardo. I basically put what each element of the talk was going to be and asked it to come up with an image for each. And apart from the fact they're slightly stretched, they're incredibly good and detailed. Hopefully you'll see that as we go through the slides. But it is that shift from kind of the efficiency savings around to effectiveness. So how effective are we being? And your role as a leader and what you're doing is kind of denoting that down to your teams. If you're going into the role with how do we make you quicker, how do you get more throughput out of people, then you're kind of only looking at a fraction. That's like, as I said, bringing Deborah Meaden into a meeting and then asking her to take the minutes of it. You're not using it in the right way. You need to think strategically with that tool. So don't underuse it. They've been trained on knowledge. Steve Jobs' knowledge is probably all in there, all of his books. Any business leader you can think of, Marcus Sheridan, all these guys, Keith Cunningham, they're all in there. And all that information is being brought and brought up to you. So why are we just giving it such simple tools? And you kind of get, I know we get into security and we talk about data and we talk about not wanting to put all your company information into some of these tools and that, but ultimately you can still use it to ask questions. You can be sensible on the questions you ask. And also you can go, here's an answer that ChatGPT has given me. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to drop it into Claude, because Claude's been trained slightly differently. So it's going to give you a slightly different viewpoint on what you're looking at. So using the right tools and using them in the right way is going to help shape you as a leader. But what that really means is you can think about it really now as your leadership team in a way. So regardless of how big your organisation is, whether you're a one-man band or 100-person strong, you're now getting access to these tools to kind of build out that team and grow what that looks like. And if you look at a sports team, if you drew a line down the middle of the team, you've effectively on one side, you've got all the people who play the game. You've got, whether it's football, whether it's NFL, hockey, rugby, Formula One, whatever sport you're into or not into, you can still see there's a clear delineation between roles. You've got the players on one side, they're the ones who are going out and delivering. So that's effectively your staff. They're the guys who are going, doing what they need to do, delivering an outcome for you. Next to that, you've got the back room. You've got the managers, you've got the coaches, you've got the scouts, you've got the physios, you've got all of that set up as well. So what you're looking at is a way in which you can use these tools now to grow your own backroom staff and have them personalised to you. So you can think about, how would we use scouts? How would we use coaches? How would we use all of this information and data that currently sits within these AI tools, bring that out so it helps us as a business and helps us grow, helps us achieve our outcomes. This is where I think AI is going to be kind of predominantly used in the future, is effectively, if I'm a one-man band, I'm really not, because I've got just access to so much information, knowledge and data, and I can use AI as my scouts to go out, look for things, look for people, look for information, bring that back to me, surface up in reports. In the same way that as a football manager in this example, you're not going to go to every single game scouting players. You've got people going out doing that research for you. You've got data analysts looking at all your performance stats and bringing all that detail back to you. So they're not necessarily making decisions, but they are kind of going out, finding the right information, the right data, what you should be doing, what you should be looking at, and surfacing that back to you as a leader so you can look at that and start decision making. And really, this one was to show that you can grow that team almost as big as you want. You've still got the players in the background, you've still got your staff, they're still doing the work. Slightly often calling them players, but it's an analogy I use a lot in some of the coaching and leadership work that I do, where you can draw that clear delineation between, we're on this side of the line, we're not allowed onto the pitch, therefore there are certain things we cannot do anymore. But there's the players who are on the pitch who are actually doing the role. What we need to do is set them up in a way that they can succeed and they can go and do their jobs as simply and easy as possible. So there's a bit of a structure, but they're all aligned to the end goal. But you can build that team out. You can start to bring in your agents, your scouts, your coaches. You've got as many as you want. It's kind of unlimited with AI. So if you do need multiple people going out looking at information, you've got access to them. You can spin up more agents, go and find the information that relates to the market, go and find competitor analysis, go and find who's looking at recruiting. You can bring all that information back to you, surface it, so that you can make proper strategic decisions based on what's happening in your market. And a lot of the time as leaders, we get buried in the day-to-day and we get buried in the work, and we haven't actually got time to lift our heads up kind of above the parapet, start looking around and seeing what's going on in the world. Can we sit down and do competitor analysis for 90 minutes during the week? Probably not, because there's lots of things going on with firefighting and we're trying to achieve various outcomes. So I haven't got time to do that work. But actually I can have a report that's scanning the market for me, just brings that information back and surfaces it as I need it. Likewise with marketing, one of the people I spoke to recently, a coffee shop, they're interested in information about some of the major chains, where they're going, where they're looking at putting new shops in, how that's going to affect them as a small independent shop. All those little things that can be surfaced to you without you having to actively go and search for it. So as a leader, you can effectively start to grow your own leadership team through the use of AI and through these agents. And as that data's coming back and saying this is what's happening, you can then drop it back into AI and say, this is happening in the town next to me, there's planning permission for this. What do you think the impact of that's going to be on my business? What steps do I need to take now to counter anything that's coming in the future? What's worked in the past for me that actually I can take forwards into the future and focus on and achieve that win? So really, we're trying to get away from, as I said, we're trying to get away from looking at these tools as efficiency tools. So I think we've done digital and digital efficiency to death. We've done transformation projects for digital transformation's gone for at least the last 15 years in various guises. We're still going through the motions. We're still going through change, and it's still always that efficiency goal. How do we make ourselves quicker, better? How do we do it with less staff? Whereas actually, this is kind of giving you an unlimited amount of staff, and you can go out and use them in separate ways to give yourself as much information, as much data as possible, but then you can also use the tools to help you interpret that data. So they're not making decisions for you, but they are showing you where there's patterns in information, patterns in data, and effectively think about how you can send all these people off to go and find that for you. So you can set your team up with the best chance of them winning at the end of that. And ultimately, this is where you're trying to get to. You've got your players on the pitch, again, as I say, performing these tasks, performing the roles that they need to perform, going out doing the work. We're not talking necessarily if you're in something like social care. We're not saying you're not going out and doing that work. You're not doing the visits. You are, but you've now got lots of information and data that's helping you and supporting you and helping drive how well you're performing forwards, rather than replacing you or trying to make things quicker. So AI is your scout, it's your analyst, it's your coach, it's your tactical advisor. So really, we're not talking replacement. We're talking about these are you building out that backroom staff team. So again, if you think of yourself as a sporting team, F1's a great example, because although it's fundamentally two drivers on a track pretty much every other weekend racing, you look at what sits behind that. Not only have you got the whole engineers sat in the factory back home at base, you've got the team principals sitting on the pit wall, you've got the mechanics, you've got the pit crew, you've got the data analysts, you've got a huge army of people effectively making sure that two cars on track do the best they can possibly do. You're now in that same boat where you can look at my business. You might only be two people, but you can build out all of these other elements to it to say, we want all that data, we want that knowledge, we want that information, we want the analysts to pull all that together to give us an insight into where we're going as a business, what's working, what's not, what we could tweak, what we could change, but also to use these tools to say, imagine you're a finance director. What do you think of this decision? How would you view it? What would be some of the pitfalls? What are the risks around that? You can start to really use it in a really clever way to help you as a business. And if you get into kind of some of the prompts that I know a lot of people have talked about, understanding how to prompt is going to be one of the key things going forwards, I think, with AI and how the tools work. So when you're asking ChatGPT or Claude or whoever a question, you're kind of giving that question a structure. So it can be, imagine you're a customer, this is what you've seen, what you've perceived. Imagine you're a finance director who's looking at this business case from an investment opportunity. What does it look like? What are the risks, as I said? Imagine you're my ops director. We're thinking of opening a second store, opening a second shop, or closing something down. What does that mean? Again, bring that information, surface it, and then use these tools with the knowledge they've got. And we know they're not perfect. We know they're going to give some rogue answers. We're still very, very early days with a lot of these tools, although we might say 5 years. 5 years over the next 50 is very, very short. And they are going to get better. They're going to get more information. They're going to get quicker. Even some of the ones I've looked at, like Replit, where you can build your own apps just by talking to it like you would ChatGPT. Ridiculously good at how quick you can spin up prototypes of systems to test them and try them. And again, I've even taken all the code out of Replit, dropped it into ChatGPT and said, run through this and highlight any issues with it. And it will go off and do that. It's incredibly good at doing those tasks. So you have to think about AI as your support team. You're the manager of a team, whether, as I said, whether it's football, rugby, NFL, hockey, whatever sport you want to be, you're the manager. You're now building out your backroom staff and what you want to do with them. And this is how we're going to start looking at AI going forwards, I think, from a leadership perspective. So you've got the ability to kind of give your team the freedom to go out and play and achieve what they need to do, but with the knowledge and the structure of what's happening, decisions that are being made, ideas that are being brought forward, and being able to use all of that data and information to start looking forwards to plan what that strategy is. So we're looking at it from a much more strategic angle than potentially we have done previously, where it's been all about how do we do things quicker, or how do we relieve someone having to write minutes after a meeting, or how do we write some emails. And as I said, some of the tools are good, some of them are very good. You do get rogue answers. I think there's a few that aren't particularly good. Some of the slide builders aren't particularly good. I've used multiple tools that I've started working with, stopped after a while because they're not really giving me the results that I need, or I can get as good a result with ChatGPT or with Claude. Uh, but what we're thinking long term is if you can elevate yourself and get yourself kind of above the company, and this is where we talk about kind of getting yourself out of the weeds, where you're buried in the day to day, you haven't got time to focus. If you can get AI to kind of start bringing you all this data and this information, and it's starting to show patterns in work, it's starting to show you opportunities that you can go forwards with, it's starting to help shape what that strategy should be, whether there's opportunities to pivot, what your competitors are doing, whether you need to make savings, whether it's financially viable to go ahead with something, whether you can scenario plan out. You're lifting yourself above kind of the business as it runs, being able to take a much kind of wider view of what's going on. And you can stand up on top of a mountain in this instance, looking down, and as you can see, all of your information is being delivered to you. So it's not replacing you as a leader, but it is enhancing you. It's bringing you the right data. It's bringing you the forecasts, the analysis that they've done, and allowing you to make better decisions for your company, and allowing you to grow and change and lead in a better way. And ultimately, everything that you've got can be pinpointed back to data or information or something to say this is why we're going in that direction, or this is why we've decided not to do that. So really, it's the course I do in leadership is actually called Ascend, and the ascent really is how you kind of get yourself out of those weeds and lift yourself up. So you've got this time, and it might not be you spend all day doing this. It might be that you can narrow it down to half an hour a day or something, because it's now being brought to you, and you can literally at the end of the day or the start of the day run through the information, spot what patterns are happening, what information's coming to you, decide what you need to do, and then you can kind of carry on with the rest of your day. So hopefully it's going to change and become more and more of a useful tool in helping you develop. And it doesn't matter whether you're, as I said, a small business or, let's go public sector, let's go a big council. Your council's making decisions every single day. There's conversations happening every day. There's political environments, there's things councillors want, there's things your staff want, there's things your residents want. And you're not really recording that or using that information. So I've worked in quite a few and across many, but we know that big reports get written, they go to a senior board, the senior board go, yeah, that's great, crack on. And it kind of gets filed. You get the minutes, the following meeting we go, are the minutes right? Yes, the minutes were right, thank you. They get filed. Imagine having all that data kind of in the systems and being able to say, here's all the decisions we made, here's the outcomes that's led to, here's some ideas we should do next, here's your corporate plan, how does that link to this, and how do we move that forwards? That's what this elevated view starts to give you, because you're now seeing all that information and data being brought to you. And really, what we're trying to get you to a point of is kind of the stress of being a leader, being under pressure, excuse me, not really being able to see what's happening, not having the time to go off and do some of the work you need to do, the competitor analysis, as I said, the writing reports gets too heavy, all of this stuff happens. But if you can start to think about AI as your team, and they're your support, they're sat next to you, you're not sitting in an office on your own, you're sitting in an office with an unlimited number of people next to you, and each one you can just give a task to and send it off to go and deliver that task. That's then going to surface this data and information. And if you can do that in a controlled way, so obviously you don't want to inundate yourself with ridiculous amounts of data, but do it in a controlled way so it's filtered and comes back to you, then you can start to make really good decisions going forwards. It means your team understand the direction you're going in. It means your strategy can be followed. We can all break it down and go, what outcomes do we need to achieve month by month, quarter by quarter, to achieve our strategic aims? And it does become much simpler and easier for you to run your business. And ultimately, you're still the manager. You're still the leader. You're still the one who's making the decision. We're not outsourcing decision making to AI. I know that I'm sure there was a company when ChatGPT first came out. there was a guy who said, I'm making ChatGPT the CEO of my business, and set it off running, and he ended up with a sportswear company. And at some point, I will check up, see how it was doing. But initially, it was doing very well. But I think people were more excited by the fact that AI was trying to run a business and set up a business. You're not trying to do that. You're not trying to achieve that. It's your business, it's your company, it's your service, it's your department. But it can help you be better. It can give you those additional resources, more help, more information, more data. And really, if you're just thinking about, wouldn't it be great if I had this? You can now have that. Wouldn't it be great if I had an advisor? You can now have that. I can't afford a business coach. You can now, because they can act as that. I can't afford strategic advisors. You can bring those in. So you can start to think about how you would set up if you almost had an unlimited backroom staff, that you could go, actually, yeah, I do need some scouts to go out and look at the market. I do need some coaching. Let's bring some information on that in. And all these things can be delivered. And for me, that's where we're getting to with leadership. It's not about efficiency, as I keep saying. There are going to be efficiency gains. You will get some. I think the report from the government was minutes, though, that people were using. They were limited because it was Copilot, which is not one I use deliberately. There's a right tool for every job, and there's some are very good at it, some are very poor. You need to find them. Some are very generic, some are very specialist. So find the right tools that work for you. Try a few. Most of them have got free trials anyway, so you can have a go and see whether or not they're giving you the right results. But you've almost got like this unlimited wealth resource of knowledge. Understands all marketing structures. It understands playbooks and processes and policies and methodologies. All these things. Ask it about your favourite business authors. Ask it about anything, and it will start to bring that information back. So you're building a team around you, giving you that support, and ultimately, the use of AI and where leadership will go is how are you using it to make yourself better, and that's better at what you do as a business, better at what you do as a leader, and better at what your team do and how they deliver their outcomes, because that's going to be the gain that you're all going to get, and how you're going to grow, deliver better outcomes, deliver better results. And whether that is, as I said, small businesses, one or two people, that's giving you a leverage to compete with bigger companies. But also now, even if you're kind of public sector, within your teams, within your departments, you can start to use this to showcase patterns, what's happening, information that would be useful to how you deliver the service. Have it rise that. Stop thinking about how do we shave 5 minutes off, how do we cut this job, how do we stop doing that. Nice to have, but not really important. We can write an email. I'm quite good. I'll use it to write some of the reports I write. But if you think about what it knows about the business and how I do it, fundamentally, my prompt is quite often 30, 40 lines of text going into ChatGPT to say, can you now format this in a way that's presentable? So I do use it in those terms. It does save me time on that. But I've still had to do the work, and I've still had to do a lot of the research and other bits. But again, I've used AI to help me. Perplexity is brilliant at going, I'm working on this, can you go find me 5 sources of information and data that relate to it? It brings those back, but every single source has got a link back to the page where it's found that information from. So you can really use it in a number of ways. And as I said, it's really getting better and better. It's only going to get better, hopefully. Well, say that. We wait for the bubble to burst, but I genuinely don't think the bubble will burst in this instance. I think there's too much riding on it. There's a lot of users already. I know there's odd talks about some of these bits, but I do see it as a fundamental tool that's going to help you deliver better results and better impact on your business and your services. But we do need to just think about it in a different way, and our leaders need to start. As I've said, the whole book I wrote 5 years ago was Digital Confidence, was directed at chief execs and directors who don't really understand technology and giving them a methodology to follow that through. We're kind of in the same ballpark with AI these days as well. So leaders need to start playing with some of these tools, having a go with them, seeing what they can do, forgetting about everything they see and read, because everything they see and read, as I've said, is all about how do we do things quicker. Quick is great, but actually being more effective and being better at what we do is much better. That's where I think AI is going to go next. And that's the key difference for me between kind of what I'm seeing at the moment with a lot of the leadership things and how we're focusing on reducing staff and reducing headcounts. And some of the big players, you look at some of the big software companies, they're trying to reduce headcount massively through using AI. What they haven't really done is gone, how are we using it to make us better as a company first? Make yourselves better first, and then look at whether or not there's the efficiency savings behind that you can then make. Because ultimately, your company might be able to stay at the exact same size it is, deliver twice as much or 3 times as much through using this, rather than just thinking about how do we kind of shrink costs within that service. And that brings us back to these 6 lovely people. So hopefully what I've tried to do is just give you a little bit of a thought process behind where I think leadership and AI is going and how we need to use it differently. So hopefully now, if I said to you, these 6 people are sitting in a room next to you, you're thinking, okay, brilliant, I can now ask Stephen Bartlett about social media, how we would use that, what's worked for us in the past, what's going to work for us in the future. I can ask Peter Jones for financial advice on the business, growing it, investment, terms like that. So you're now starting to think of AI as being each of these people, put a face to them. Each one that you're bringing together is a specialist in a certain area, and you're now sending it off to do a piece of work for you and going and finding new information. And if that means you can almost name them, make them human if you really want to. Give them all names, but Peter is my tool that goes and does this. Stephen's my tool that goes and does this. Deborah's my tool that goes and does this. They've all got a speciality. They've all got something that can help you grow, but think about them strategically. Think about them from an effectiveness process, not the fact that you would go into Dragon's Den, stand up and go, right, who's taking the minutes of this pitch? Because I guarantee you'd be thrown out the room within seconds. So there is just a little bit of a thought process that you need to go back to. And on that, I am going to talk a little bit about the tool I'm building at the moment, just because it relates kind of directly back to it. So SinCity AI tool is brilliant, but they do always put a gap in SinCity, even when I tell them it's one word. I think it might be one on the next slide, but it is one word. Don't worry about the gap. But we're building an AI tool for businesses. It says small businesses, but small and medium businesses, where a lot of these tasks are going to take place for you. And how we've designed it is effectively around 4 rooms, and we've done it in that way. So hopefully, in people's minds, they sit there and go, right, today I'm going to go into the performance room, or I'm going to go into the briefing room, or I'm going into the team room or the intelligence room. And what we want to do is get people in that mindset to go, right, I'm going into the performance room. The performance room is where you've got your annual strategy, some information around that. It's broken down into quarters. You've got outcomes that you want to achieve in each quarter. We're going to connect it to your finance system, and it's going to start to pull all those metrics in. It's going to say, this is how you're doing. This is how you're tracking against what you want to achieve this year. Here's some ideas of where you're not achieving. Here's what's going wrong. Here's how you make that better. There's going to be finance information, worm graphs, and various other bits in that. So that's the one that's going in, and you're looking at it and going, how is my business doing? Are we on track? Are we achieving what we need to achieve? The briefing room sits next to that. This is effectively your scouts. These are where you can say, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. Go and find information for me. And they're constantly out scouring the internet for information and data that will be useful to you as your company. So as I said, you could be a coffee shop, you could be plumbers, you could be an IT company, but you want to understand what my competitors are doing. You might want local information because you're a local business. Bring all that information back. Some marketing information, competitor analysis, as we said. It's going to highlight all of that and bring it to you. Anything of interest you can kind of click into and say, yep, that looks interesting, but actually I need more data. You can ask it to go do a deep dive, go and find as much information as possible on that information so you can, again, highlight and use that. Or if it's bringing information back that's not useful, you can say not useful and tell it why. So you're starting to train it on information and data that is useful to you as a business. So we've got how we're performing, how we're doing, how we're getting on, plus all this data now coming in that's telling us what's happening in the wider world outside of our business. The team room then is around accountability. So things that are popping up in the briefing room, we're dropping those into the team room and just making sure they're being followed through, because we know in businesses and in busy departments, lots of ideas, lots of thoughts, lots of conversations, lots of decisions made. A lot of things don't actually go anywhere, get forgotten. I thought someone else was doing it, they thought I was doing it. We had a really good idea and a year later we've forgotten all about it. So that kind of team room is about accountability, but we're also keeping decision logs in there. So every decision we've made as a business is also going to be captured. You're going to have this complete decision history and like journal of information. So again, I'll build it out for you. We've got the performance room, how we're doing as a business. The briefing room, bring all that information back from the scouts about what's happening outside my business. The team room, where we're going to make people accountable and record every decision that we've made across the business, how that feeds into performance and briefing. And then the intelligence room is where we kind of pull all of that together. So think of this as your dragons. It's your kind of chat GPT interface in a way, but you've now got the knowledge of all the large language models, the AI tools, everything they've been trained on, built, everything they know about business, about process, about marketing, about policy. You've got the elements we've trained in strategy and how to achieve it, and how to break down into your outcomes, your goals, and what you need to achieve. And then you're training it also on your own business data. So you've got your performance data, you've got your briefing data, what's interesting, what's not, what ideas you've taken forwards, what you haven't, and the team, the decisions, and everything that's happening. So now when you're asking it, why is my performance not where I want it to be, or what should I do next quarter, how am I going forward, it's taking that kind of generic knowledge and linking it now with how your company is actually doing and how it's performing and what's happening in the market, and giving you advice based on that. So it's really kind of that supercharge of information and data that you can kind of just drop into and drop out of. You're not going to be in this all day, every day. Performance will also give you quarterly and weekly reports that will be designed and passed out among your team. So you're starting to pull together a picture of how we're doing a business, how we're growing. So we talk a lot about working on your business versus working in your business. This is kind of the working on your business. So what are we doing? Where do we need to find the time to do all this stuff? Actually, we've got the time because I've built that performance team out. I've got my scouts, I've got my coaches, I've got the backroom staff. They're going off and doing all of that for me. I can effectively ask the intelligence room, ask all this knowledge, what's working, what's not, what do I do next, what decisions have we made that have hampered us, what decisions have been really good, what risks are we looking at for next year, how should we plan out our strategy for the following quarter. All of that information, but trained on your business data and everything else. So hopefully a really useful tool for businesses. And if you want an interest, I'm going to be, I don't know if I can move myself. I'm going to move myself quickly so you can see the QR code. The QR code takes you up to the early sign on. There's a wait list that you can jump into for that, fill out a few questions, and you'll join the wait list. You can have a look at the tool on sincityai.co.uk or email me at that address if it's of interest. But again, we're trying to think strategically with these tools and build out a strategic AI kind of team of people that are working for you so that your business can kind of be the best it can actually be. So thank you all for listening. I hope that wasn't too much of a ramble. I do want you just to think strategically with how you use these tools. You as a leader you're in such a great position where you can tap into all this stuff now. So make the most of it. Stop thinking about how do we shave 5 minutes off an email and any of that stuff. Let's start thinking about how we use all this to make us better at what we do. Thank you all.